You know, how many times have you heard Gary V say, you don't need to have it all figured out right now, and don't go work a job you don't want to work. Just figure it out later.
Be patient. Yeah, all the time.
You see that from him all the time, and I'm sure that works for some people. We own a career services company. We do resume writing and career planning, interview coaching. I mean, we spent 2 decades doing this type of work, and then we're also, we own a half a dozen recruiting firms. So we've dealt with people's careers every way, shape, or form for, again, 20 years. And everything I've ever seen completely goes against that thought of, you don't have to have it all figured out. Take your time. And you don't have to have it all figured out, Kane. But to sit idle in your 20s right now, it's probably the worst thing you can do.
I to me, I agree completely. And there's a lot of stuff around. Yeah, I don't know how to say it properly, but we all think that, when we're young, we all think that we're special and that we're gonna, we're the one that's gonna, create the NFT that's gonna make us $1 million, or we're gonna have this massive liquidation event by the time we're 30. I'm guilty of that too. But I remember, for me at least, when I think back at like the trajectory of my earnings through my 20s into my 30s, it's only when I kind of wised up to thinking like, look, I just got to do the things properly, and then I saw a much better return, so to speak. So I agree with you completely, James.
Well, when I was working on the book Headwind, and even the advice I give my own friends and family, is that your 20s is the time where you go bust your butt and you get as much experience as possible. You take those risks, such as, hey, I'm not married, I don't have kids, young, I got energy, I can afford to move from Detroit to California for 5 years and go try this out, and still come back and be, 29. It's when I know it's against the grain and people don't want to hear this, but you're on this channel because you want to hear the things you need to hear if you have high ambitions. And that's us saying, don't try to work 32 or 40 hours in your 20s. Your 20s is when you try to work that 45 or 50 hours, try to get as much experience as possible, start building a career, because you don't want to do that when you're 40, right? So it's that time when life is just simpler. You have your energy. You don't have anything tying you down. Can't, like, what happens if you get sick? I got sick, when I was like 38, and I thought my life was over. And it's like, do people think about these things? So I know you saw that chart where now it shows your earning potentials is like your highest earning potentials like late 30s to early 40s, and then it just drops off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
What
it's
was
an
what was the
inverted bell.
what was the biggest thing you learned from that chart?
uh that's a good point. I guess the biggest takeaway I took was that you expect, when you're young, that you're going to make money forever, right? And that you're always just starting. But there is almost this race to maximize what you're earning between your 30s and 40s, because despite what we want to think, there is probably some level of ageism in the workplace, and you got to set yourself up.
And I remember when you found that article, you called me and you explained the curve, and you're like, the big thing was people weren't expecting to earn less from like 45 to 60.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, 30 years ago, that kind of flatlined out. Or if you were like as an executive or whatnot, then you might have even saw a climb. The problem is right now, everyone's doing like the great resignation. They're jumping around for an extra 5 grand, and they're not getting good at anything. They're shopping for job titles, and they're trying to get a few more bucks. Well, we know on the resume writing side how those careers turn out. It's they hop around every year or every, 18 months, like LinkedIn tells you to do, except the people on LinkedIn who tell you that aren't going to pay your bills when you're broke at 52. And by the time you're 40, people start looking at you like, well, they can't keep a job, because here's what happens, Kane. And this is what we hear on the recruiting side. By the time you get 45 or 50, no one's hiring you for your 25 years of experience. I've when's the last time have I seen a job description come across a table that says you need 25 years of experience?
So true. Yep.
You don't see that. So, because what they can do is most jobs you can get by with 5 to 7 or 10 years max. And then it's kind of all the same. So when companies are looking at somebody with 25 years of experience, it's for different values. You're going to bring maturity to the young workforce they have. You're reliable. You're dependable. You're going to be able to make good decisions. You're going to be trustworthy. They can count on you. So when you've had a job every year and a half since you got out of school, and now you're 45, and there's someone that's 30 years old that's willing to do the same job for probably like 40,000 less,
Right.
that value that you're supposed to have, you don't have because you kept switching jobs. So what you watch is these careers at their 40s, they take a nosedive. And then it's like, well, I didn't have enough saved for retirement. I'm going to end up working a bunch of jobs I don't want to. This is like the people I know that are making like low to mid 6 figures or more. They're not jumping jobs every year, King.
Right.
They're worried about the right job and the right company and learning. And they believe that if they make the right moves, that the second half of their career was probably going to pay them 5 times as much as the first half of their career. First 20 years versus second 20 years. But they spent their 20s working hard, climbing the ladder, building a skill set, building a reputation. We ran into somebody once that went to school, got a bachelor's degree. Then they went back to law school, and at this point they're 27 or 28 years old. They said they couldn't find the job they wanted, but it seemed like they just didn't want to work. They go back and get another master's degree, another grad degree, right? So now they're about 30, 31 years old, and they have no work experience. Well, guess what the conversation looked like with them when they were 32? Take a guess.
Oh, tons of debt and no skills. I don't know.
200 plus K in debt, and they're at the same starting point as the 21, 22-year-old coming out of undergrad. Right. Because they were a professional learner is what they are. So you're 32 years old with no work experience. Now you go, well, I spent $250,000 or more on my education. I don't want to take a job for 55,000. I'm better than that. Guess where they were at 33?
Nearly the same place.
In the same place, because they're expecting to make $85,000 to $100,000 because of all this education, even though the corporate world's like, why would I pay you 90 when there's another kid coming out of U of M right now that'll take 55 or 60?
Yeah.
And they just set themselves up for failure. And I think I checked on them again a couple years later, and it's just like, man, you're like 35 years old and lost. You just like screwed away the prime time of your career right now. So it's just one of those things that use your 20s to get yourself set up. Use the 30s to start maximizing it. And then you got that second half of your career where those earnings could be massive because you're an SME in the field, you're dependable, you're reliable, you're the go-to person. You're the person that keeps getting recruited away because, Google or Tesla or SpaceX wants you. It's just interesting because what you hear on social media, and that's the theme of this channel here, never seems to go very well with how things work in the real world. I hate that because I don't want to see anybody struggle. You spend all this money going to school, and then you got these influencers or your friends. I mean, I think it's even college professors to an extent, King, that program you with these ideas. And then you get out in the real world, and that Fortune 100 you work for is like, yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah. I just want to go on. Sorry, James.
No, go ahead.
Just press on the point that you made earlier, which is that you've got to use your 20s to acquire the skills that allow you to become that executive. You made the point of like everybody thinks that, oh, as an executive, yeah, I'm going to make money forever. And what happens is if you jump a lot in your 20s and you don't learn those skills, then that who's going to hire an executive that doesn't really know what they're doing, right? And I think I just wanted to hit that point one more time because I think it's important that um, people understand the implications of job hopping a lot in your 20s, right? Going back to that inverted bell, if you're thinking, okay, I'm the one person that's going to not have an inverted bell, I'm just going to have an upward trajectory of earnings for the rest of my life. Well, you probably got to become, a C-suite individual, and keep that going. But you've got to be very good at what you do. And I don't think a lot of people realize how good you have to be, probably because there aren't that many of those jobs.
And the higher you go up the ladder, the less people. It's just hard getting that through to someone in their 20s right now when they've been pushed all this other content their whole life. But we know from the recruiting world, from what we see companies do, and from what we see coaching people at Employment Boost and the resume writing, it's a lot of our customers end up being late 40s plus because they're struggling. They've been on the job market 2 years trying to get a job. It's tough out there. But did you plan for that in your savings and your 401k and did you plan for all this? No, you thought you would work all the way to 62 or 65 and everything was going to be good. So a lot of the stuff we do is let's make some smart moves because you have a career that's going to span 4 decades. And right now you're trying to play a game where you're hopping around to get an extra 2 grand, which if you need it, I understand it. Go do it. But you're hopping around for 2 grand or 5 grand now, and it's going to cost you $500,000 later on. Kane, that makes no sense to me.
It's a lot of money too when you think of it that way.
But your point on the 20s, I try to get people out of my own playbook. And I've watched people take a decade to get to where I was 2 years into my career. I was in my, and you know this story, but I was in my
Yeah.
early 20s charging people $150 an hour for consulting. And my first thing was I sat in a bookstore floor and I read every book I could and learned as much as I could about a topic. And then once I mastered that topic, I went on to the next topic. And I would spend, 6, 8, 9 months just horse blinders on, focusing on that topic. And then once I mastered that topic, I'd go on to the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Okay, and it took a lot of work. And I'm out there working, who knows how many hours a week. It's sure the hell it wasn't 32 or 40. It's 60, 70, 80. So now I'm getting experience twice as fast as everybody else. And I'm honing in. I'm being an SME on multiple subjects in the technology world. Well, I can get more business and I have hours to work at that point.
Mhm.
And then you got those people, oh, that doesn't work. And I'm like, my bank account seems to be working real well. Right?
Yeah.
And then they go do it their way. And then, they're 30, 32 years old and they're still not where I was at 22. So it's like, we know the path. The blueprint's often right in front of us. It's just that we want to go listen to the people that tell us the things we want to hear. And I think the problem with that is a lot of times that's just the wrong information. Sometimes you need to hear the things you don't want to hear. If you really want to succeed, if you really want to set yourself up for success, if you want to see those late 20s and early 30s just take off, where you can set yourself up for life, there's a way to play the game.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, James. So when you were in the bookshop reading all the books, did you pick a topic that you absolutely loved, or did you pick a topic that you knew the market might need, or a skill that the market might need?
I definitely wasn't studying stuff I loved. So I looked for gaps when I would talk to like the contracting houses that were doing the tech work.
Mm-hmm.
Like what's in demand right now. So I remember at one point Microsoft Exchange Server was the big thing. And they were looking for a lot of companies were looking for people that were certified in Microsoft Exchange Server. Probably one of the most irritating Microsoft products I've ever had to work on. But as soon as that test came out, you know what? There was a Cybex book I bought that came out before the test did, if I recall. I studied as much Microsoft Exchange Server as I could so I could go pass that test. And I was one of the first people in the state of Michigan to be certified in Microsoft Exchange Server. One of the most grueling products came. I focused on what the market needed. It would be pointless to spend all that time developing a skill that no one wanted to pay you for. Logically doesn't make sense, correct?
No, 100%.
But I just, when my friends have me talk to their kids, I'm saying, get your butt out of college and go. Hey, we're talking before that, internships. We want big internships on your resume. Go somewhere where you can learn and put some skills on your resume, some keywords on your resume. We want to hit the ground running when you're 21, 22 years old and don't look back for a decade. It's just go. You got the energy, you got the time, and people know this. They get married and all of a sudden work until 7 o'clock. It's a little tougher. Working on Saturday mornings when you got kids, a little tougher.
Right.
You can't pick that family up and say, I'm gonna move to Austin. It's easy when it's yourself and you say, I'm gonna go to Austin for 3 years and work for this company, build up some skill sets, and then see where I go. Kane, I knew people that moved to Toronto, to London. Not London, Canada, but like London. Because it was in their 20s and they could. And we know in the recruiting world, trying to get people to relocate once they have like a family, it is 10,000% more difficult. We actually got to probably contact 10 times as many people to do a relocation search than it is, versus a normal search when you're targeting someone with 15, 20 years experience. So, man, use your 20s to set yourself up and stop listening to the people on social media. Unless you're gonna, chip in on your GoFundMe for your retirement, stop listening to them.
So true.
But anyways, that's all I got for this one.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I got you.